Welcome to She Said podcast. Ta-da. Welcome to another week of the podcast. It has been a busy week, and I'm sorry if you can hear my animals in the background. I am sitting outside where it is slightly chilly here in Florida today, but we're going to make it through. So I hope everyone has had a wonderful week. Today, it's been a day. Internet problems. It's been wonderful. I wanted to talk about kind of like my personal experience and stuff with my faith, church, just the state of things right now. There's been a lot of recent changes in my life over the past couple of months. I lost a job that I had been with for over 3 years, something I really enjoyed, but was also like super stressful because everything just got thrown into my lap. But, I've been reevaluating things and looking at things differently. And so, I'm reevaluating my faith and reconsidering attending church. So, let's see, with my job, I've been in the property management industry for over 10 years. I've done both long-term, short-term, and it's what I feel like I'm made for. I, really enjoyed it, but I hated the company that I worked for. Or maybe not the company so much as the person that I worked for. And hate is a strong word. I very much disliked this person because they were toxic and manipulative and just very like shady in the way that they did things, and didn't necessarily always follow the policies and procedures that were put into place or the things that we were supposed to do. But it's a very toxic work environment, and more so than I thought later on. But I've been the sole moneymaker for my family because my husband is unable to work. And I couldn't find another job where I was making the same amount of money that I was. And I needed to make that money because that's where our expenses and stuff were. But so it caused a lot of issues, and eventually the owner of the company, and I'll say owner because I don't consider this person my boss, because a boss is actually involved on the day-to-day things and up to date with what's going on and where the market is and the industry, and being able to help the people, the employees. And the owner was none of that. Showed up when it was convenient, or when she would get a phone call and someone would complain, and then she'd just give them what they wanted instead of actually following the policies and procedures, like I said earlier. So the owner just decided one day I was no longer needed. And I think what it was more so is that I am not a yes person. So if I see where there could be a flaw, or I see where something's not going to match up, or see where it doesn't really fit with the like the setup that we have, I'm going to say something, because I wouldn't want you to waste money or time with something that's not going to be beneficial. But you know what? It ended up, I am so happy to no longer be in that environment or with that company or under that person, because so many, like, it caused me a lot of stress, which caused me health issues, and I never had any time to myself. I was always on call, and I could never get any assistance. So when I needed assistance, like, oh, well, you can handle it. Well, no, I'm only one person. So as much as I'd like to be, superwoman and handle everything, that's just not possible. But that just put me one step closer to the changes that were yet to come. So which leads to my history with like church. So I did actually grow up in church the majority of my life. And I grew up in what I would call like a Pentecostal Assembly of God church. And I hated the fact that I felt like people were judged based on the way that they looked or the choices that they made in regards to the clothes they wore, the way they dyed their hair, whether or not they got piercings or whether or not they had tattoos. And, you know, I'm of the mindset that I want to decorate my canvas. God gave me a canvas. I'm decorating my canvas, and I don't see anything wrong with that. And I don't think it's unbiblical either. But we were also taught in church not to question, which I find really ironic. And I couldn't find the verse that I was looking for, but it actually states that God wants us to question instead of blindly following. And so, you know, we were always taught that you should never question your leadership, that the pastor knows so much more and is so much closer to God than us as regular congregation people are. And that we shouldn't question their choices or what they decide to do. And I never agreed with that. I don't think that they, how do I put this, are a better Christian than I am just because they're a pastor. Now they may have everyone has a different type of relationship. But I don't think that it makes it so much better than mine. I think that our relationships are dependent on us. But I don't think that just because you're in a leadership pastoral position that makes your relationship with God or your knowledge so much more important. And because I felt like I was only staying in church to please other people, I ended up staying until like my early 20s. But I hated how I was constantly feeling controlled, and in small things, not even in like, you shouldn't do this, like for real kind of things, but you shouldn't get tattoos, you shouldn't get piercings, you shouldn't, you know, be involved in an alternative, you know, like your bedroom activities were, you know, wrong. And you know, you're told how to think and how to act and how to dress, and it's just very controlling. And I think that God convicts you independently. He tells you where you need to change and what you need to change. So because of being in church and being raised the way that I was, I ended up staying in a relationship with my ex-husband for a lot longer than I should have, but I would do it all over again in a heartbeat because I got 2 wonderful kids out of it. So it's one of those things that God uses for, it seems bad at the time, but definitely had a positive outcome. Not necessarily all the way around, but I wouldn't trade my kids for the world. So shortly after, I lost my job. You know, like we talked about last week, the, you know, Charlie Kirk assassination, and how that just really kind of hit me in a way, and it caused me to start reevaluating like my faith, how strong I was in my faith, whether or not I was doing things the way that I should be doing them. And so essentially I felt convicted in a way. And I experienced such a heaviness after that. And I couldn't describe it as anything other than I need to change something. So I, you know, I lost my job and all of that. And so with so many unknowns, for the first time in my life, I literally prayed and I said, God, it's yours. Like, I can't change this. I can't fix this. I can't provide what needs to be provided. And so I gave it to him, and I put all of my faith, literally all of my faith in him, that he's going to take care of my family and myself. And so in all of that, my husband and I both felt like we maybe needed to get invested back in a church. Now, keep in mind, I hadn't been in church and like attending a church regularly in well over a decade. Okay. Maybe close to 2 decades. And I was looking for something specific when I was looking for a church. And I couldn't really describe like what I was looking for other than I wanted to be able to feel the presence of God. So I decided I found a church that wasn't far from our house and we went and tried it. And the first week I was like, it was Baptism Sunday, which just felt really weird in the first place to like be visiting on that Sunday. But worship felt very much like a concert. There were lights and fog and whatever, and that may be some people's forte. It's not mine. But it felt very much like entertainment versus worship. And it was very structured. This ended at this time, this ended at this time, and this ended at this time. And I'm just like, well, how is anything supposed to flow with the presence of God? And then there was a guest speaker. And one of the things I didn't like is that the guest speaker spoke out against like a specific religion, which I get that Christians are different, like different religions and their beliefs and things like that. But specifically calling out for something that was very like, I don't know, to me, it was just kind of blatant disrespect. It didn't really matter. He could have generalized it. Just didn't sit right with me. But like the next week we didn't end up going, and then we went back to the church. I'm like, okay, I'll give it one more shot. We left in the middle of worship because it was just entertainment. It was like a concert, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. This is not at all what I'm looking for. So then we went to the second church, and the second church was a lot like the church I grew up in, which I'm sure you can guess didn't sit well with me. It was also very structured and very like set in its time frame, and God forbid, literally, you go over that time frame. And so I was like, I don't like it. Like the congregation and stuff seemed really nice. No one like reached out, to like really welcome us other than the welcoming committee out in the parking lot. But it's just what it was. The people were really nice, but that was definitely not the church for me. So then we had some personal things that went on in our life that kept us from trying church number 3. And so we were going to go try it one week, and then we couldn't end up going. Oh, and the second church, the day that we went, was also Baptism Sunday. I hope you're seeing a theme here. So we ended up, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, we ended up going to church number 3. Now, from when I grew up in church, there were songs that were popular during that time as worship music, and I still like those. And so, I connect with those, I guess. But so we went to the third church, and the third church is actually in a tent. So that was an experience. I've never been to a church in the United States that was in a tent. When I used to do missionary work in Mexico with like my youth group when I was younger and stuff, the churches and stuff were in tents or houses or buildings or, maybe like made out of a wooden pallet. It varied. I don't know, like with the second church, I felt all of that judgment that I felt when I was growing up. So obviously my style is different. I tend to wear darker colors. I don't really wear dresses or anything girly like that. I have piercings. I have tattoos. I just like, it really should follow the rule of don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing. But the third church that we went and tried out is in a tent. They are currently building a building, but it hasn't been completed yet. And it's on a smaller scale. They only have one service. There's probably like 100 plus people in the congregation. And they were very nice, very welcoming. But it was definitely like, we got there like right as worship started. We were running a little late that morning. And the first song that they played was one of the worship songs on my playlist from when I was younger. And that just kind of hit me in like all the right spots, right? And then worship is just flowing. It's not on a set schedule. It was great. And then we get to, it's baptism Sunday, right? The 3 strikes you're out, like third time's the charm. So my kids didn't actually end up going with us to try out this third church. And so I had texted my daughter and I was like, it's baptism Sunday. She ends up calling us on our way home and she goes, I think it's a sign. I think you need to get rebaptized. So we have decided as a family that when they do their next baptism service, we will all be getting rebaptized as a family, and we will go from there. But the last church just felt right. Like you could feel God. You could feel that it was led. And one of the things I really love about this church that I've never experienced in a church before is that before the pastor preaches, he has the entire congregation pray over him so that he is speaking out of the Spirit and not out of his flesh. And for me, that is so important because that shows me that the pastor sees himself on level ground with his congregation and that he realizes that he could be speaking out of his flesh from a place of authority. And so I'm going to take the hint from God and we're all going to get rebaptized. As I've been reevaluating my faith, one of the things that I always had issues with was some of the things that were taught from the pulpit and how they were taught. One of the things I grew up with, and I haven't been able to do a whole lot of research, so I may cover this later, is that we're all going to stand before God, even as Christians, and be judged for every single one of our actions. And recently I was told that that is not actually correct context. So I will come back to that once I do some research. But one thing I have done research on is Matthew 17:20, which reads, you do not have enough faith. Jesus told them, I tell you the truth. If you had faith, even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. Nothing would be impossible. Now, I have Jewish lineage, right? I think some of my family ends up going all the way back to the Holocaust. And I may be incorrect, but I'm pretty sure a conversation I had covered that. But so I did some deep diving into the Orthodox Hebrew translation of Matthew 17:20. And from what it says is that it is not translated correctly. So what it says is, then Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. So if you take a deeper look at it, it doesn't talk about the size of the mustard seed. It talks about the actual Hebrew translation of that word is either like or same as. So we're going to use like in this scenario. So it's telling us to have faith like a mustard seed. Now, if you do some research on the mustard seed is one of the most hardy seeds out there that can survive in multiple climates, okay, in multiple like conditions. So, from my perspective, God is telling us that we need to have faith like a mustard seed, where we can be like the mustard seed and be hardy. And with the mustard seeds, the roots grow really deeply and far out. And so I take that in regards to our faith is we should have faith like the mustard seed. We should be able to survive in difficult conditions and through trials, and that we should be growing our roots deeply in our faith and far out to touch other people, to be able to reach people with our faith and show it by our faith, but that we should be so deeply rooted that no matter what the world throws at us, we know for sure that we can never be separated from the love of God, and that we can use our faith as a testament. So this gave me like a whole new perspective on, I wonder what else I've been taught in church that was not correctly translated, or the perspective was changed by the leadership. And I say that because there are translations that say like a mustard seed, not the size of a mustard seed. So then it makes me question, why are they focusing on the size? Why is this something that is so like shoved down your throat, essentially, from the pulpit, that you can have like the most minuscule amount of faith and you can move a mountain? That doesn't make sense to me, because I need to have deeply rooted faith in order to move a mountain. Like, I need to be steadfast in my faith. So, but that's my perspective. Maybe do a little bit of research. This is where I question. This is where I'm like, maybe I wasn't taught right. I need to investigate what I'm being taught from the pulpit, because maybe my perspective is different than the pastor's. And so those are my thoughts and my experience that's been happening over the past few months. Maybe you connect with it. Maybe it like hits you in all, in that place in your gut that you're like, maybe I need to reevaluate, or maybe I need to study differently, or maybe I need to do some of my own research. Maybe you need to take a more in-depth view of the Bible and the scriptures. I mean, internet is a fantastic thing, and looking things up specifically can help. I mean, you can also get physical books. I'm always a supporter of physical books, but I didn't have any physical books. And so I did my research and stuff online to be able to get a better perspective. But follow that feeling and that conviction that you have. Don't ignore it, because then you're not following the path that God has laid for you, and you're making things harder on yourself. So have faith that God has it all figured out, even if you don't. And believe me, I am following that myself right now. But maybe we have a different perspective on things, or maybe you have different thoughts, or you've done different research. I'm always interested in hearing like different perspectives, or maybe some research that you've done yourself with translations, or what you think that something says. Please send them to me. Like, I'm, comment, whatever. We got Facebook. You can always send me like a private message, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all of that. So, but I just wanted to share with you kind of those things. Maybe you're looking to go to a different church and you don't know what you're looking for. Well, those are the things I was looking for. I wanted to feel the presence of God, and I didn't want to feel like I was stuck on a schedule. So thanks for joining me and listening to all of the things. But I will be here same time, same place, and same chaos next week. So till then, have a good one.